Do you remember the heyday of wrestling games back in the early 2000s? Tons of great games. I played a ton of them, but one game I never played and I've always wanted to see what it was all about was WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Dreamcast. We are currently in an era of wrestling games dominated by the 2K series. Luckily, competition is on the way soon, just around the corner, with the upcoming AEW Fight Forever game that should be coming out. I've seen that it has been caught up in some ESRB battles here, so we'll see what that means. But if you played wrestling games back in the early 2000s, there was a ton of games to choose from, different titles that you could go out and try and then continue to play the one that you liked. And it featured wrestlers from my favorite era of wrestling, the Attitude Era. But when you think about the early 2000s and you think about all of the wrestling games out there, the ones I think come to most people's minds as the best wrestling games were the SmackDown line of titles and WWF No Mercy, all great wrestling games. Even today, you can go out and have fun with them. Now, those games are great. I mean, they were awesome games, but there are games specifically called Royal Rumble. I wanted to talk about an arcade port that came out on the Sega Dreamcast, WWF Royal Rumble. So personally, I find going back and playing older wrestling games always a joy. Like, I always find that most of them are still fun. Even all the way back to like the Super Nintendo days, you can really have a good time playing those. They've done a great job with wrestling games throughout the years, but when it comes to the newer titles, I really haven't played too many of them. Recently, however, I did pick up WWE 2K22, and it's the first time that I've jumped into a wrestling game since the 6th generation of consoles. But the older titles bring me a ton of joy, a ton of nostalgia. They're still really fun to play. But one game that I never checked out or was never able to play was WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Dreamcast. It's an interesting one. It is a game that you were able to find in the arcades, but then also go home and play it on your Sega Dreamcast. It was released on August 15th, 2000, developed by Ukes, who also developed the SmackDown series, and it was published by THQ. Now, the main thing to keep in mind for this game, like I mentioned, it is technically just an arcade game ported over to the Sega Dreamcast, so it plays exactly like an arcade game. It didn't translate that well to the home console because one of the biggest complaints with WWF Royal Rumble is that there are only 2 game modes, and those game modes are Exhibition and Royal Rumble. Generally, with a home console game, depending on the price that you're paying for it, you would expect a deeper experience. You would expect to have multiple game modes and just more things to do overall when you jump in. There's something to bring you longevity, which I guess you could argue with arcade games, the longevity is continuously trying to go back and beat your score. And WWF Royal Rumble is just that. It is purely a pick up and play game, and you go back every single time to improve on your previous run. So firstly, there is the exhibition mode, and in this mode, you select who you want to play as, then you get to select a partner, and then you will be facing different wrestlers one at a time with the goal to pin them or knock them out, and your partner can be used to interfere in this match when you need help, when you're in trouble. But when you use your partner, you have to wait until they are regenerated to be able to use them again. Secondly, the main game mode here, which is what the game is named after, and that is the Royal Rumble mode. And this plays just like a regular Royal Rumble. You select your wrestler, and then you attempt to eliminate your opponents by throwing them over the top rope. There is a time limit to this match, and every time you eliminate an opponent, the time limit increases. Now, one of the other biggest issues with this game is the roster. When you think of Royal Rumble, you expect that general 30-man Royal Rumble where you would be seeing new wrestlers all the time. Unfortunately, this isn't the case because the roster is actually relatively small, so you will see a repeat of wrestlers coming back into the ring. In fact, here's the roster. We have D'Lo Brown, Chris Jericho, Godfather, Edge, Rikishi, Kane, Stone Cold, Mankind, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Taz, The Undertaker, Triple H, X-Pac, Road Dogg, Big Show, Al Snow, Matt Hardy, and Jeff Hardy. But still not enough to have a real Royal Rumble with a bunch of different people always coming into the ring. Now, in terms of how this game controls, it's very similar to many other wrestling games of this era. You basically have your strikes, you have your grapple, and once you have an important grapple, you can do your different moves, your throws, all that type of stuff. And then there is the running button, which you run around the ring, get up on the turnbuckle, all of that stuff. Now, overall, WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Dreamcast is a fun time to play. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I had a good time going through this and just seeing how well this game aged. Is this still something you could pick up and play today and have a decent time? Spend 30 minutes here just going through and trying to get a good score, get through all of the exhibition matches and win Royal Rumbles, and you absolutely can. But there are a ton of flaws, which I mentioned, mainly the game modes as well as the smaller roster, especially because there isn't even the 30 wrestlers for the Royal Rumble. But if you are looking for a game just to pick up and play, you definitely can find some enjoyment in WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Dreamcast, just continuously going back and trying to have a better run than your previous one. I mean, it's an arcade game at the end of the day, and that's really what they are for, is always continuously trying to improve and become better at the game, rather than just trying to slowly, methodically go through it, or like what we see now in the current wrestling games, just trying to build your character and more of the RPG elements that you see within the 2K series. Now, the general, again, the gameplay, it is serviceable. It's like pretty much like any other wrestling game with the strikes and the grapples and everything. It's responsive, it works well, so I don't really have too much complaints about the controls themselves. The graphics for a 2000 game for the Sega Dreamcast aren't terrible, and the fact that they were able to get a bunch of wrestlers on screen actually pretty impressive for that time, but nothing that will blow you away. There are far better looking games even during that generation, but just don't expect a deep experience with this game if you are going to try it out, and I think you won't be that disappointed. So I'd say, hey, give WWF Royal Rumble a try for the Sega Dreamcast. Go ahead, choose your favorite wrestler, because I'm sure a lot of people's favorite wrestlers will be available within this game. A lot of the big ones are in there, but just don't expect too much and you will be able to have some fun. But that's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. Have you played this game before, and are you going to go check it out if you haven't? Thank you for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you like these types of videos, if you like collection videos, top 5 videos for older generations of consoles. I'll be making all of that stuff, so appreciate you stopping by, and I'll catch you in the next video.